call to order today the March 8th, 2023 meeting of Grandview Heights Board of Zoning Appeals. If everybody can first stand and do the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Okay. Donosby?
Present.
Okay. Chair, or Vice Chair Kavanaugh?
Here.
Westisa?
Here.
Gutzman?
Here.
Chair Kinzinger?
Here.
Director Mazzara?
Here.
Director Kelker?
Here.
City Attorney Coppedge?
Here. All right. Next, we have two sets of meetings to
Yes.
in front of us,
We
right?
can do them all.
Two sets of minutes, yeah. Has everybody had a chance to review? Or I
Do I
guess,
need to abstain from the December? I was absent.
yes, yeah, so we'll vote on these separately because we don't have the same people that are going. Is there any objection to voting on these right now? Okay, so let's start with December 14th.
Is there a motion?
I motion to approve the minutes from December 14th, 2022.
I second.
All in favor say aye, those not in favor say nay.
Aye.
Abstain.
Is there a motion for February 8th minutes?
Move to make a motion to approve the minutes from February 8th, 2023 meeting. Second.
Those in favor say aye, those not in favor say nay.
Aye.
Abstain.
Okay, next, I would ask anybody who's here, if you're planning to speak or you think there's any chance you're going to speak, if you could stand up and we will administer the oath. Raise your right hand. I swear to tell the truth,
Swear to tell the truth.
the whole truth.
The whole truth.
Thank you. Any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes.
Okay, so we'll move right into the first case, BZA case 02-2023. Address is 1205 Dover Avenue. Applicant Lori K. Lar, owners Lori K. Lar and James Edward Griffin Jr. Do we have the applicant or somebody representing the applicant here with us today?
Yeah, here.
If you can come up to the podium and tell us your name and your address.
My name is Jim Griffin and my address is 1205 Dover Avenue, Columbus, 03212.
I guess if you can tell us what we've got in front of us today.
Well, we have the same issue that we had a year ago when I was last here. I'm feeling much better because my hip has been replaced since then. And this is the first day as a 72-year-old. So, thank you. We can begin on the first page of the summary. As you've written it, the applicant is proposing a complex transformation of their single-family home into a combination house, greenhouse. And I would like to change that by saying that I've probably not been quite as precise as I should have been in describing, but ultimately this is, and that is, I'm converting my house from a conventionally heated and electrified house to one which is completely powered by the sun. And the only way that can be accomplished in my case is to gain access to the sun, and where that exists on my property, I was on the second floor. What I'm actually doing is converting an existing conventional structure into a passive solar house intended to provide all of its energy needs. The disapproval due to the scale of the requested variances, then there's some addendums made. So I've done a couple of calculations. It appears that, as Ms. Poker has mentioned, that there's some sensitivity to what I'm trying to do here. And it ends up that there's some issues with getting too close or too near or too far or wherever I'm going with this thing. So it ends up, let me see where, in my notes. And according to the documents that I'm looking at here, that you sent to me, as it is this right now, we all acknowledge that we live in a non-compliant lot, and substantially non-compliant, which is really the crux of the whole issue here. And as I have designed my project, it's been calculated to be at 2,505 square feet, which, based upon a non-compliant lot, would exceed the allotted coverage by 4.4%. And the first thing I noticed that the dimensions on the plan, or in the notes here for the north-south dimension is 32 feet 4 inches. That's actually 32 feet. And that if you take that 4 inches by 48 feet long, you end up diminishing or reducing the square footage by 16 feet, which then gets us to something like 3.7% overage. And because I have designed balconies that surround the second floor over the garage, to surround that that room adds apparently 244 square feet to the footprint. So if for some reason that need, why I would be denied the pleasant amenity of having a second floor balcony surrounding what will be a very, very nice room, why that causes people trouble, I'm having a hard time getting my arms around. But if I were to eliminate those.
Yeah, sir, I'm sorry, we typically wouldn't interrupt, but I want to make sure we're hitting everything. Are you saying that the dimension that's on the plan of 32'4" is incorrect?
Yes. I don't know where, because I've never written 32'4" down on a dimension.
It's on the plan that.
Well, then,
that we have.
apparently, that I'm telling you that that is, the correct dimension should be 32 feet.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
So if I were to be forced to eliminate those balconies, I am then now within 0.97% of available allotted coverage, so that it appears that there's some concern about the front yard overhang, which is 3 feet, which is shorter than the depth of the bed of quince that I have growing along the south side of our house. And it was just this evening, as a matter of fact, that I had this somewhat of an epiphany, and I said, this issue about the front yard is really curious, because the overhang is on the second floor, and the sensation that one will get about, well, for the people who walk up and down our street, wherever they might be, the sensation would be still that our house is where it is now, off the sidewalk. And you look up and you said, yeah, but that doesn't really impact me. I'm not 12 feet tall. I'm not going to hit my head on that. And then I realized, My neighbor to the south house extends beyond the east side of our house by 7 feet. There is a structure which is 7 feet off the same line as the front of my house is, which means that that apparently is in violation, or that is a precedent that I can use to say, well, if that can be there, then my second story is there. And I have to say that the underlying motivation for this whole project is the last 40 years of my life involved in the energy world in many manner, shapes, or form. And if you recall the last time I was here, I was admonished for making the audacious inquiry of the people who are sitting on this panel to just express some rudimentary understanding of what the domestic and global energy situation is. And I was admonished. So I'm not going to even attempt to explain to you why this is, other than that my entire professional life, beginning as a biology student and continuing through many years working in the renewable energy industry, trained as an environmental biologist, fully understanding what the dynamic of the global energy and climate situation is, I believe it is within my rights to take steps that will at least insulate me from the perturbations that are now fully in effect, that are going to begin to impact everybody in this room, me included, as regards the availability of dependable electricity supplies, natural gas supplies, food security, all of those things. And whether or not you pay attention to this, concerned about it, I am. And I believe that the best way for me to prepare for these perturbations and to ignore that these are going on now is really quite preposterous. And to deny me the comparatively minor intrusions into interstitial spaces just really causes me to wonder, why am I even bothering? And then today I want to make sure about this. The existence of the MI project is it's applicable in the discussion what's going on here. The complaint I've heard is that this new addition is going to intrude on the interstitial space between my house and my neighbor's house. A space which is occupied by my little garden and a lawn, and into which my neighbor ventures maybe once a week in the summertime to cut that, but otherwise she's never there. There's nothing there. It's on the north side of the house. There's no sun there. It's just a space. And for some reason it's annoying, and I really don't get that, because the new configuration of the house is such that the existing gable, which is 23 feet high, is going to be greatly reduced because of the new profile of the second story, which in fact would make it less intrusive than as it exists right now, if that's an issue. I don't know. But then I walked around a corner, 1 block down, 1 block over, and I had to verify this, but I have a pretty good eye for dimensions, and man, those new urban house over those things are 6 feet apart. So I went over and measured it, and yeah, they are 6 feet apart. And I guess people voluntarily choose to live in that configuration. I particularly don't find anything attractive about it, but to say that my second story is going to get too close to my neighbor's house is somewhat refuted by the fact that this board has approved the positioning of houses in such a fashion.
Okay, we don't typically, we don't typically interrupt here, but this is not a typical situation.
It is not.
Not a typical application, not being presented in a typical way. So I'm gonna interject a little bit. First, I want to say, I want to be clear on what it is we are doing here, what it is we do here.
Mhm.
We don't write the zoning, we don't control the zoning.
Ms. Coker and I have already gone over this.
Okay, well,
But my
then-
approach to you is only going to be one of, let's be commonsensical here. I am a well-established member of this community. I am wanting to do something to my house which should be an objective for society, that to become independent of polluting fossil fuel energy sources. Point of fact, I tore the air conditioning out of our house years ago because I walk the walk.
Sir,
And
okay.
I'm sorry, this is an existential situation for me, okay? My entire existence depends on the correct resolution of this problem. I have my entire life invested in this thing. And if this bombs out, I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I got serious, serious problems. And why I am meeting resistance for this project, I find absolutely incapable of understanding. Because there's nothing here that is intruding on anybody's life. It's a 3.7% overage of what would be allowed. That's a rounding error. And you're not gonna let me put balconies around my new addition so I can sit up there in the evening and look at the evening sky and the trees and live up in that air that it would be. And why you find that objectionable, how it violates some kind of a regulation that was promulgated during a time that doesn't exist anymore. It's over. The life that you people think is going to continue is over.
Our job here is to determine if an application, this is what we've been asked to do by the city, this is what we are here as volunteers, as a member of the community to do, is to see if an application meets the established criteria for a variance, meets what's been established to deviate from what is written in the zoning code. This is not up to us to decide what we like and what we do not like. That is not what we do. And I'm just trying to keep this conversation constrained to what's in front of us and what it is we do here. A lot of your objections are with the zoning code itself, which is not under our purview to alter the zoning code. We will grant a variance if it meets the criteria for a variance. On another point you made, I want to point out that we have never done anything in the Grandview yard, the MI homes you refer to. That's a special improvement district, or I think that's what we call it. It has its own rules, and it does not come before us.
Although it's in Grandview Heights.
Yes.
And why would you not have anything to say about that? Because it's completely disrupted.
Because that's the way
It's completely disrupted the flavor of our neighborhood.
Whether or not we think that should come before us or not, it's not under our control if the homes in the yard come before us.
And the only reason I bring that up is because spacing between houses is clearly a subjective idea. Because if it were quantitative, those houses are either too close together, or my house is way further apart from the house that it needs to be. And that is a precedent. And whether it is in a special district or not, you know where this is going. This is, when this gets argued before a judge, and would say, well, why can't you have houses in my neighborhood that are 6 feet apart, and you won't let me put an addition on my house when the second story is 8 foot 2 inches from the next door neighbor? That's not gonna go over, you know that. And,
Chair, for me,
Yes, please.
just to, again, to flow-wise, ordinarily, how this works is that you describe your project, I'll present the staff report, neighbors are invited to speak, those who have standing, and then the board will discuss. That's the sort of general flow of things. I think to move the discussion along, it might be helpful to just describe the project, literally describe what's on the drawings that you're gonna have.
I would be glad to do that.
Second floor, this is a balcony, that's, here's where the solar panels are, it's literally described.
I think you all have copies of the drawings.
That's
Mm.
true, but sometimes it's hard to.
Yeah, well, of course, I mean,
Know what they're looking at.
and I've mentioned to both you and Robert that my architect passed away. So here, I'm on my own now, and I can't afford to hire another architect, simply can't do it. I wasn't counting on my architect dying. Rather
So
upsetting.
there's a screen behind you.
Oh,
You
okay.
can point to, you can just literally describe your project.
Okay, well, this is the rough plan of the second floor. This is the new garage for which a slab has already been poured. It was approved in a other submission that I gave to the city. The second floor continues across, creating a covered outside living space, and then is overhung on the south side by 2 feet, the east, west, and north sides by 3 feet. The new garage has been positioned in exactly the same position that the original garage was. And this wall, the north wall of the garage, is going to be continuous with the overhang of the second floor, and that's going to be finished out in a board and batten configuration with certain trim details that are going to allow for ventilation louvers to be installed that will be full windows for all intents and purposes. The greenhouse is based on it was up until I changed the plan, the traditional Chinese greenhouse, which is a elliptical shape and cross-section. One of the modifications I've made to my plan is to change that to a more conventional vertical and then horizontal, vertical wall, horizontal roof. And the glazing material for the greenhouse is a material called ETFE. It's a film that resembles polyethylene, but it is in fact an architectural fabric that is used extensively around the world in all manner of applications, but most ideally suited for greenhouse agriculture. It is the best solar transmission characteristics of any glazing material, be it glass or otherwise. It also is extremely light, which means that my structure does not have to be robust. Suspended from the girts, if you will, the studs and rafters, a series of custom photovoltaic panels which are designed to serve as not only a source of electricity, but also as a shading device for the greenhouse. Because growing food is a major part of this whole plan, we're installing an aquaponics system, and the more difficult conditioning for a greenhouse is to keep it cool. It's very easy to heat a greenhouse. It's very difficult to keep it cool. And these PV louvers are also equipped with the solar water heating component, which means that the PV system works more efficiently, sucks all of the heat out of the air, out of the greenhouse, and maintains the 12-month out of the year ideal growing environment, which is the reason why people do greenhouse aquaponics in this configuration. It's the only growing system known to be able to operate 12 months out of the year with zero external energy resources or nutrient resources, producing organic food and fish all year long. Aquaponics is a well-established growing protocol that's been carrying on all around the world. In fact, in Europe and Asia, this type of project I'm doing is commonplace. It's how society feeds itself. I'm a professional builder. I've spent many years in the high-end architecture woodworking world. I know good details. I have every intention of building this into an absolutely gorgeous piece of work. It's the only kind of work I know how to do. It's also going to be built of the latest building techniques, meaning that our energy liability is going to be reduced to the greatest extent that's physically able to be reduced. This elevation right here, it's unfortunate. I was trying to get somebody to do a good rendering for me, but wasn't able to get it together. But the garage on the second floor, this is really not well done. This second story of multi-purpose room, if you will, with 4 8-foot wide sliding glass panels. The restroom in front of which will be operable, giving access to the balcony that surrounds the second story. The garage is 25 feet north to south, 24 feet east to west. It's a place where I can set my woodworking tools up because I still like to make things, and it's going to be wonderful to have a room where I can keep my tools set up without having to break everything down, which I've been doing for the last, till I tore down my old garage. If there are any questions that anybody has about these drawings, please ask me and I will be glad to.
It sounds like, are you indicating that the exterior elevations are not entirely accurate?
Yeah, this is what happens when your architect dies. I don't know how to, I'm drawing various iterations of it, but I'm not, I can draw technical drawings, but I'm not an artist, and I have to get that sorted out. But the one that was done for my previous meeting was very horrible, and it left,
Well,
I wouldn't have liked it either.
Unfortunately, one of the elements in front of us is aesthetic review, and we have to be able to approve what's in front of us.
Mhm.
And if what's in front of us is not accurate to what you want to build, you can see the complication of that.
Yeah, but I think that, well, I have some other sketches, this has been frustrating me, sometimes I wonder why I'm not just down in Florida hanging around with all my high school buddies, but that's not who I am. I need to be busy, and this is how I want to keep myself busy for the rest of my life.
Okay, I think we should move on to the staff report.
Okay. So I will step through this, this application kind of stepwise, if you will. And if you look at the, just we can start at the very front page, Megan. And move down just a little bit. So I want to point out, and this is some things I will also say to just sort of help the applicant understand. some things. We are in RS2 here. The city does have, as you know, 2 main residential districts, but I think it could be as many as 5 overall for residential. There's a variety of things. The 2 main ones are RS1 and RS2. RS1 is for larger lots, generally south of First and west of Grandview Avenue. RS2 is where the majority of the smaller homes are located in the city. The difference being lot size required and setbacks required. So this home is in a zoning district that generally requires 6-foot side yard setbacks and a total of 12 feet on the side yards minimum. RS1 would require more than that, 12 feet on the sides and 25 feet minimum. And there are other residential zoning districts such as residential apartment or special zone areas such as Grandview Yard that have their own setback requirements and lot coverage requirements as well. So typical from that perspective. With regard to the overall recommendations, as you'll see, it's disapproval, but with a potential pathway for further refinement and discussion, which we can get into as we go through the report. On the second page, the first photo you can see illustrates where this site is located. It is in the area east of Northwest Boulevard and just south of 3rd Avenue. 3rd Avenue along here is in Columbus. It is zoned commercial just to the north of here. Beyond that, the homes to the south are generally single family. There is a multifamily unit right across the street from this particular home. The setbacks for these homes are generally aligned. Going south along Dover Avenue, there is some variation. There's also an alley, as you can see on the next page. You can see that there's an alley directly to the north and then the commercial building. And then across on the second photo there, you can see looking straight south on Dover, the multifamily to the left there. This site is a little bit sloping, so there's some grade change from the street up to the house, both on the north sides as well as the east side. There's a retaining wall there that helps to establish a flat front yard for the property. There is one larger street tree along Dover, and a number of other trees in and around this property. No known historic or cultural features on the site. The property itself does not carry any particular designation. Let's see, we sort of talked about surrounding land uses and the road pedestrian bike network. This lot is a little unusual in that it's adjacent to 2 alleys. That doesn't occur very often in town. Considerations in terms of the existing lot width, it is definitely one of the smaller lots in the city at 40 feet wide and 112 feet deep. Total square footage is 4,480. RS2 requires that lots be 40 feet wide and 6,000 feet deep, so it's compliant in terms of width, but is only 75% of the required area, which of course then restricts the amount of square footage that can be built on a parcel to be within the 40% maximum lot coverage that's permitted by code. So of the 4,480 that the lot is in terms of square footage, 40% of that is 1,792 square feet. A compliant lot that was 6,000 square feet would permit 2,400. However, on this lot, only 1,792 is permitted. The requested coverage is 2,505, or 55.9% of the lot. So basically a 15.9% coverage, or almost 40% more than would be permitted on the side of the lot, or like 4.5% if it were a compliant lot. So there is a hardship there in terms of the existing lot size. I was just doing some calculations, and if those balconies are permeable, they're, let's say, wood plank or something like that, they're about 248 square feet, so that would bring the overall lot coverage down somewhat. Though still not within what would be compliant for the size of the lot that is. it would bring it to under what would be permitted for a compliant lot. The dimensions on the drawing is a little bit inconsistent. I tried my best to figure out what was intended and maybe didn't get it right every time. But I used the second floor dimensions of 32'4", and that yields, what's remaining there, then therefore 7'8". The site plan shows a 4-foot setback for the garage, and if that's aligned, then that leaves 3'8" for the south side. So 4 feet on the north side, 3'8" on the south side is what I can discern from the drawings. Okay. The required setbacks in both cases are 6 feet. On both sides are 12 feet total. You would have 4 feet on the north side based on the drawings and 3'8" on the south side, for a total of 7'8" versus 12 feet, stated in the zoning code. Because the house and garage are combined, the rear yard, which is normally measured from the back plane of the home, now the home is attached to the garage, so it becomes the back plane of the garage, is 5'6" as listed. And then also the proposed second-story addition overhangs the existing home 3 feet into the existing front yard. With regard to aesthetic review, the applicant provided, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at some of the illustrations at the back of the packet that were provided, of some of the maybe less conventional or less common homes in the area, but still homes that do existing Gravy Heights. Design guidelines note that really there's quite a wide variety of styles.
I actually have a new set of, just one new house, and I should have put that in there as well.
Yeah.
That house right
That's
there.
down. This home was an old gas station called Farmer Northwest in Virginia, I think. In any event, there are certainly a variety of homes. The existing home is a Cape Cod, fairly simple vernacular Cape Cod style home. The proposal, I would say, appears to intend to transform the style of the home into something that is more, and the applicant has indicated in emails that are attached to the staff report, a desire to move towards what could be seen as a mid-century style. However, I would say that in my judgment, the transformation is incomplete. There are elements of the Cape Cod home that are remaining on the first floor. The cladding, the linear details and things like that are remaining from the Cape Cod home, whereas the rest of it is moving towards this mid-century style. The design guidelines do set out a number of considerations. However, as the board has seen in the past, they don't cover every kind of thing that applicants sometimes bring before us. They don't contemplate second floor additions, and they don't contemplate complete transformations in style or of the home in general. That said, from what can be gleaned from the drawings, the project doesn't immediately appear to comply with the intent of the design guidelines in terms of a number of very specific things, making the addition secondary to the original building, drawing cues from the original house, including proportional spacing of windows, angle of roof pitch, similar roofing materials, adding only as much space as is needed while respecting the integrity of the original house, forming massing similar to those of the original structure, and using materials that would have been commonplace at the time historically. That said, I would say again, the design guidelines are not 100%. It'll cover every instance of something that may be brought forward. In terms of use of a greenhouse, it's a little unconventional the way it's been proposed. However, residential zoning districts, not only in Gravy Heights, but certainly around, all I can know is Ohio, do contemplate greenhouses. Are fairly common in residential districts. So there's no issue in terms of the use that's being proposed per se. the greenhouse is actually listed in our accessory building uses section of the code. However, because this project is attached, it's not an accessory use, it's the main use. Collectively, the dimensional variances are substantial because there are many of them. Some have more impact perhaps than others, and some arise from the condition of the lot in a way that others don't. And what I mean by that is the width of this lot is compliant, so the side yard setbacks don't necessarily arise because there's a problem with the width of the lot. It's a choice on the part of the applicant. However, the overall square footage of the lot is a condition of the lot, and so the overall lot coverage is something that is, that arises at least in part, not entirely, but at least in part because of the size of the lot. So there's a little bit of difference in there. And because of those differences, our recommendations vary somewhat. Dimensional variances in terms of the overall lot coverage, there may be some consideration here, particularly if, as the applicant has indicated, I don't know that you've indicated what the balconies are actually made out of, but if they are permeable, we could take those out of lot coverage. They don't, from what I can tell, they don't have a roof over them. So if that's the case, the square footage would come under the 2,400 square feet that could be permitted by, for a compliant lot, so there may be consideration there that could be considered. The south side yard setback is the setback that is most impactful to other residential homes. And so given consideration, potential consideration positively with regard to other setbacks, staff does not recommend variance on the south side yard setback. The north side yard setback may be reasonable. Again, it permits some additional construction on this very small lot in a way that is relatively, doesn't impact other residential properties. There's an alley there, then there's a jurisdictional change with a manufacturing kind of use building on the north side, so it's not really imposing on any residences to the north. In terms of the rear yard, again, collectively disapproval. However, here again, because of the primary use that's sought, a 5'6" setback may be something that could be considered in order to facilitate the project overall. Total side yard, again, disapproval with the caveats listed previously, which would be that we would continue to recommend not approving the southern setback on the side yard, but may consider the northern setback, the difference in impact there. Aesthetic review, as it stands, disapproval is recommended. However, if the design could be finished and would come into compliance, a total transformation of the home to a sort of mid-century style that is similar to other homes of that era that are present in the neighborhood, and not something that is sort of Cape Cod on the bottom and mid-century for the rest of it. If it could be made to be coherent, then perhaps it could be considered positively. So overall, that's how we analyzed the project. There's some logic for perhaps some consideration on the variance request and for aesthetic review with some modifications.
Mr. Chairman, just procedurally before we move forward, I think the applicant submitted a document or pictures that were not part of his original submission.
Yes.
Is it your intention that those would become part of the record this evening?
It's just another example of an existing building in our neighborhood. I guess you could put it in there.
Okay.
I've got copies of it, so I don't need them.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, I think we could designate that as applicant's exhibit 1 or A, where it doesn't really matter. You can make that decision, the chair, and then admit that into the record. Everything else, it's already part of his application, the staff report, all those documents are already part of the record. But just, due process for him, I want to make sure that if he wanted that to be part of the consideration this evening, that's in the record.
Yeah, so let's do that. Let's designate that as applicant's exhibit 1. There are how many pages? 3 pages?
Yep.
Yeah, 2 pages of this, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. At this time, do we have any comments from the community? Anybody who would like to speak? Now's a good time to do that. Why don't you come up to the podium, give us your name and address.
Okay, my name is Karen Hubert, and I live at 1201 Dover, the south side,
Can you spell your last name?
Huber. And right now, I'm really confused because the only drawings that I've seen are the ones that were originally submitted. So now I don't know what. I kind of made some notes contingent upon that particular, submission. And I did this so that I could kind of remember everything that I wanted to say. But I've lived in my house 38 years, and they've been my neighbor for about 24 plus. And the way it will directly affect me is the variances. And if there is a balcony that goes across the backyard, I will have zero privacy in my backyard if I want to be out there. We have worked together in the past trying to improve their lot for gardening outside. We agreed to take a tree down that was in my yard so that they would get more sun, and that I would get shade from the large tree that was in their backyard. Well, since then, that tree's gone now too. So, that is not good. But also, at that time, my fence was peeled back, and it still remains that way. And I don't remember giving any approval for that to be done, and there's a makeshift storage pod back there. So I have a temporary fence back there so that my dog doesn't get back in there, and we have critters that are coming and going from down there. My dog's blind, she doesn't need to meet up with a skunk or possum or whatever. My understanding also was that the renovation hadn't been approved from last year, but I see now that there's a new concrete pad out back, which is larger than the original footprint of the garage and carport that used to be there. So I don't know if something happened between last year and when that was done. And if somebody can, let me know about that.
Yeah,
Do you want me to answer that? I can.
Sure.
Sure.
So after he was denied, then he came in with his decision was just to build a detached garage.
Okay.
So we reviewed it, it met the setbacks, the size, so we issued a permit for a detached garage,
Okay.
not knowing that he was gonna plan on building his addition over the top of it. So we approved just a detached accessory structure, not with the intent that the house was gonna go over the top of it.
Okay. All right, and that includes the balcony type thing that goes along.
Right, that was not part of the,
Okay.
that wasn't part of the approval for us. It was strictly just a detached garage.
Okay, all right, so second on my thing is how it affects my neighbors and myself with the turning into the alley that is Columbus, which is right behind the 3rd Avenue buildings there. It's very, very difficult. It was before we even had the entryway for the drive into the garage. Because of the retaining wall and the cement pillars that the buildings have back there. To make a right-hand turn, you have to cut into the neighbor right behind, into their driveway access, which is unpaved. And a lot of times, you know, you gotta turn left, so you're going out of your way to get out of there. And third, we've been on this a little bit more than a year with everything that's been going on with construction and demo and you know, it's an ongoing construction site. And we need to get some realistic resolution for it that is beneficial to everybody, not just one person. So that's, and we need some accountability. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other community comments? Anybody else want to speak to this matter? Okay. So we'll move on to board discussion, comments, questions.
I do have one question, and Dr. Colbert, you might be able to answer this. Sheet A 1.2, the dimensions that are on that sheet, and also the layout that is on that sheet, is different than what is present on A1. And it makes dimensions on A 1.2 end up having that second story longer, like wider, but shallower. So as I was looking through everything, I was trying to figure out what the actual dimensions are that we're reviewing.
Well, what I would say is that I am not 100% certain. I think alignment of the dimensions across all of the drawings is necessary. I did my best to kind of sort between them and find the dimensions that seem to indicate intent, but I couldn't swear to what exactly.
I can tell you what that dimension is very quickly. It's 80 feet east to west. The portion of the project over the existing house is 32 feet north to south, and the dimension of the multi-purpose room over the garage sans balcony is 25 by 32.
Yeah, so there are definitely some dimensional,
On A1, it's 80 plus 4 with the 4-foot balcony.
yeah.
No, without 4-foot balcony.
If I may, obviously the applicant has had some challenges with his architect passing. I think there would be benefit to the board's determination, less so on the hyper specifics of dimensions and more so on the kind of philosophy of consideration. Whether a transformation of the style of the home is appropriate, whether the drawings represent that yet, whether substantive setbacks on both sides as well as major lot coverage setbacks, front setback, rear yard setback, all of those things collectively individually, if there's any consideration for them philosophically as opposed to in the minutia of it.
I had one clarification on the summary on page 6. You had the total side yard at 10 feet on the second to last, or third to last bullet point. Is that actually the 7 foot feet? I just want to make sure that, I know you said just to not get into the specifics, but.
In the list,
Yeah, in your list of bullet points, it says total side yard 10 feet, but I think previously it states that it's 7 foot 8 total side yard.
so the existing, where I could find it is a bit over 6 feet. I believe it was 6 foot and something on the south side today.
I'm talking with the new, okay?
Yeah, those bullet points are a potential, if some changes were made, this is what they would become.
Oh, I didn't process
So
on that.
right, exactly,
I'm sorry, I
that
didn't-
last list is, potential considerations, which really we're just recommending, or could see a pathway to recommending
God, I didn't pick up on that.
a setback on the north side, a lot coverage, overage, and aesthetic review pending some revisions.
I feel a lot of sympathy for the applicant's situation with the architect and the additional cost that would be involved in getting a new architect up to speed. However, we have to know what it is we're approving.
Oh, okay, here.
And we don't have that in front of us.
I will tell you right now, I will find somebody to do a rendering of this project as it will ultimately be built. I will do that starting tomorrow.
And then the drawing dimensions would also need to
Well,
be
well-
consistent.
I will delineate the actual dimensions that the project is designed to be built to. Again, losing, I don't have CAD capability, so I find myself having to do all of this by hand, which is very cumbersome, and I can't get into the files because I just don't have, I don't have that skill. I've always drawn on a board. And, but I will find somebody to produce the renderings, and I will have a rendering done for all 4 elevations to be the precision that I can have it done.
I think having accurate elevation renderings would help a lot. We need to know, especially for such a transformation.
I really do need to offer my apology. I should have been more diligent about that, and the guy that I would initially talk to, I lost track of him, and it's not hard, it's very hard to find somebody who's got those skills that I know about. I'm not familiar with this community in this city. Back home I could do it, here I don't know what to do.
If I can say something too, I think it'd be really beneficial to provide the materials that you're gonna place on the exterior siding, so that the board can look at.
Absolutely,
glare, you know, if
I
you
will
have If it's a
detail
shiny
it.
surface, then you've gotta worry about the glare,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
so.
Yeah, or even photograph examples of the glazing that you're going to be using, you know, in other installations. That's what.
I have those.
Would you be able to answer what material the walkway along the top is, so we can hone in on that?
The balconies?
Yeah.
It would be a 1x6 deck board, not intended to be a roof.
So that qualifies as a permeable surface?
Permeable.
Depending on what's below.
Sure.
If he has a concrete slab directly underneath it, then we're gonna have to fix that slab.
Understood.
Now, that would extend beyond the slab, be over the adjacent, whatever landscaping is there. there's a grow bed back there right now. There's a 16-foot long by 4-foot wide raised bed. And there used to be 3 compost bins that I built, but one of those is gone, so those will be put back. The fence, to which was referred earlier, will be reestablished as so I can get this temporary storage unit that I had to build because originally I tried to get pods to come out to drop a container off that I could help. They couldn't get it in there. And so I ended up having to build something to get over that. And that was after or before I found out about Units, which has a delivery mechanism which makes pods look kind of retarded. And they could have put it right in there, but I'm stuck with it now. And until I get a place to put the materials, the tools, and which is mostly what's in there are tools, to get that back into their home. But your point is well taken, and I apologize for not having been prepared for that tonight. I should have been. My brain sometimes doesn't work well.
My thoughts are mostly along the line that, you know, the hardship for lot coverage is well presented, but even with the updated drawings, you know, I think consideration of some of the recommendations the Director Colker and others have made tonight are, you know, definitely strongly would encourage you to consider those, just because we have to build our things based on whether it creates a hardship based on zoning code.
Well, I'm going to present to you a rendering which is going to depict precisely what I have in mind as to the finishes that are going to be installed on this project.
Would, I agree with staff's recommendation that your lot is a standard width. Would there be any way to reorient any of your second floor to accommodate not having to step out your south wall? So that you would not need the south wall side yard variance?
What you're asking me to do is to compromise or the maximization of the productive growing area. This is an expensive structure, and the amount of space that I would have to give up for a mere 2 feet, and that compared to the damage I would suffer, denying myself the 96 square feet of growing space.
I'm not asking you to get rid of it. I'm asking you, would there be a way to reorient it so you could get that square footage that you need, but maybe not from that location on the lot?
Yeah, the south offset variance is the most problematic one. That's what we're trying
And
to
it's
find a way
problematic
around.
because right now the houses are 13 feet apart. I'm gonna be 2 feet into that, up in the air. I just cannot imagine how that could be a perturbation. It is intellectually very difficult for me to understand that. It is no imposition whatsoever. It doesn't impact anything.
It is, as Rick has said earlier, we are not here to make the zoning codes.
I understand that.
We are all here to evaluate what is before us and how what you're presenting us is a difficulty that we should encourage us to grant a variance for that.
I'm gonna start with the submission of these renderings, and then we'll deal with that other issue later, because it's gonna be a point, for sure. And it's part of the design, and the one concept that I failed to articulate more forcefully is that the fundamental principle of good design is form follows function. And because I consider the function of this structure to be my guarantee of being able to withstand the perturbations that are going to begin to become manifest regarding, again, I'm not, you don't have to believe me if you don't want to. But I believe it strongly, and I am not alone in these assessments. And I'm trying to, as gently as possible, explain that the vast majority of Americans do not fully comprehend the entire concept of energy as it relates to our, please hear me out.
But this does not pertain to
It
your
does pertain,
application.
because this is what is going to ultimately become the conversation should this not be able to be resolved here. Because then we're going to get into the real nitty-gritty of it, and then I will inundate the proceedings with the statistics that substantiate the reason that I insist on doing this. And what is happening here is I have a group of people who are telling me that I cannot take measures which I strongly believe are measures that this country should be taking across the landscape to ready society for what's going to happen. And I'm going to be ready for it. And there will be people that will be able to enjoy the fruits of my labors. There will be food to be had for some people around. I get a great joy of giving food away. But I'm really, it's hard for me, I'm part of a segment of society who's been infatuated with these ideas ever since I read the book called Limits to Growth, which is the most important book ever written about what's going on our planet. And this has been my life for 40 years. This is all I've ever cared about for 40 years of my life. And it's been a long, hard journey for me. It's been crazy, it's been informative, it's been fun. But we are to the point now where we have situations in this country right now where people are going around in various areas and blowing up, shooting out substations. This is one of the most terrifying concepts I've ever encountered, because to be perfectly candid with you, I pay attention to these things. And if I were going to attempt to disrupt society, that's what I would do. And that's what's happening now. There are lunatics out there that are going to begin to do things when life starts getting harder. We had this situation in East Palestine. Can you imagine? We have a train that goes by over here every single day.
Nobody's questioning your
But
motivation.
what I'm telling you is that
But
I
your motivation is
incorporate these
not germane to
ideas
this
into my
conversation.
argument. This is an existential situation. This is not business as usual anymore. Business as usual is done. And the longer we delay confronting that reality and beginning to take measures, for example, quit having a war over energy, which is what is going on right now, quit having that war and take those monies and put it back into our society.
If I may,
Yeah.
I apologize for interrupting. I'm going to make a motion to the board that we do two things. We vote on the application in front of us. We vote to table on the application in front of us. Those are the two options I'm going to recommend to the board to take action.
The second one?
To table it.
Mm-hmm.
That means there's no vote on the application.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm recommending to the board that we make a motion to either vote on the application in front of us or to make a motion to table the application in front of us. How that happens, I don't know. I'm just mentioning it to the board, so if you please do.
Sir.
Thank you.
That does put the question to you
Mhm.
of, if we believe we are ready to vote on this now, we do have we can vote on what's in front of us, up or down. Or it can be tabled, which basically means we're not voting on this, which is what happened last time you came in, right? And then made some changes, and came back. Those are our options. Do you have a preference?
Table it. And I will bring these renderings and I'll present to you my perception of the finished product of this, and then we'll have a vote.
When you come back with renderings, will you please bring back confirmed dimensions as well? Because that's
Absolutely.
important, because I think that there is some good variance to some of them.
Well, how that happens, I don't know, but I've got a set of drawings now that the footprint dimension is exactly the same because every layer that I draw falls on top of that same footprint, and I will ensure that that is the case.
And I think I'd like to get through a couple of things I want to say that I'll feel bad if they're not said and we just vote and move on, which is we're trying to give you some feedback on what we think will make this something that could pass. And that feedback is that the south variance is problematic, is going to be an issue. And I think because of the size of your lot, we're leaning towards, and again, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I think the lot coverage variance is not as problematic because you've got an exceptionally smaller lot. I think potentially, we'd have to see it, but I think even closer to your north side, like encroaching in the north side a little bit more, may not be problematic because of the fact that you're on the alley with a commercial structure on the other side. South variance is problematic. The street facing one, I know the staff said that was maybe the next most problematic one. I think that one, I think the renderings might help a lot with that. I think that one is kind of we'd like to see what you bring in. But I feel it's important to say that I think that south one, I think you're gonna have a hard time the next meeting if you come back with the renderings and the dimensions fixed, but the south variance is the same. Again, this is one member of the board's opinion, but I feel it's important to give you as much feedback as we can for when you're coming back next time.
Mhm.
That's what
I agree that you present a hardship with your lot coverage. However, it's the width and the side variances that are difficult to me. That it doesn't necessarily present a hardship. And if there is a way to reconfigure some of your spaces potentially, and I'm not saying make them smaller, but potentially to reconfigure them so you can have what you need and make it functional.
The one thing that I'm going to point out right now is that what you're asking me to do is to purposefully throw my project out of symmetry. And if there's one thing that is troublesome on any high-quality structure is bad symmetry. And what you're suggesting is that I have no overhang on one side of my house and a big overhang on the other side of the house.
I'm suggesting that this might be, maybe it's a chance to, as Director Coker had said, to maybe re-envision the whole project. And if you're looking to do a complete transformative project, maybe instead of just imagining it as chopping off the one side of the project, look at it as re-envisioning the whole of the project. And I think that it could still be very similar to what you're imagining, it just might shift slightly.
One of the advantages of overhangs is that it protects your house from water. And because I'm going to have a gutter there that will capture all of the precipitation that is incident upon the greenhouse roof. To have that cascading down directly over my house is really not good building practice. It's actually,
Well, with
it's a
your-
violation of good building
With
practice.
your house, you will be, per city code, you were directed to run all water off of the roof to the street.
Well, or
Or
capture it
or capture it.
on site.
Yeah.
But where the gable is, I only have two short gutters on the perpendicular gables, which means all of the rain that falls along the south side of my house falls right alongside my house, and I'm trying to avoid that, eliminate that. Because water in the basement oftentimes can be I don't really have a big issue with it, but who knows what comes in the future. Now, can somebody tell me what is the procedure now for me to submit these? Do I have to go through, submit this whole thing again? Do I have to, or can we, I don't really want to have to send out notifications again. We have one person, I will make sure that she comes, I'll tell her when it is.
Each time the case comes before the board, we do have to do notifications, and again, nobody set those parameters here, they're set by code. The board is asking for some revisions to the drawings, so if you are amenable to those revisions, then, making them and bringing a revised project back sounds as though the board may be receptive to a revised project. If you prefer not to make revisions, I don't know that there's a pathway that I'm hearing from the board for approval.
Okay.
Do you mind if I make a comment about building permit
Not at all.
process? I just want to make sure that, they're asking you for renderings, and I don't want you to have to spend extra money, but, per our conversation and per the adjudication letter that I sent you, you do need a design professional to design this project. So I want to make sure that, I would recommend that whoever's doing your renderings, if you hire an architect, is involved, because you will have to provide stamped drawings on this, because it's not conventional construction. So I just want to make sure that you're not spending money with somebody else that could be helping you with the design process.
All right. Is that it?
Yep.
That's it. We got a motion.
I make a motion to table BZA case 02/2022, 2023.
Second.
Calno,
Yes.
LaSusa,
Yes.
Scotsman,
Yes.
Donosby,
Yes.
Chair Kinsler.
Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Certainly.
So when these renderings come back, or these drawings come back, I couldn't hear clearly. Will there be another meeting for us to see? And does it follow the same rules where?
Yes.
And is there a timeline for that, or are we gonna be here this time next year?
We don't know when he's gonna, when the applicant would submit those and come back. It's gonna be on their timeline, the applicant's time.
Okay. And does there come a time that when it drags on and the backyard is an eyesore, that anything gets done about that?
Whatever the condition of the backyard is, that really has nothing to do with this,
Okay,
that's a separate,
so I would go to somebody else to
Yeah,
complain about that.
You can go to the 311 on our website. It's a 311 procedure to basically file a complaint.
Okay.
And then you have to
Okay,
follow that up, so.
all right, thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, I would just stand at ease for a moment.
Yes. That's what we're doing. Yeah, we're gonna take just a couple minutes to wrap up and we'll get to our other business. Yeah, I know.
Chairman, may I have the exhibits of them?
Certainly.
File, please?
That one?
I was gonna ask him another question about that, so that he was addressed
Would the board like to take a 5-minute recess?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's take an official 5 minutes. It is cold.
Your strategy of freezing up the applicant.
That's what Okay. She needs to rifles. Yeah. Didn't have them. People.
Thank you all, have a great night.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Alright, that's us in 5 minutes. If everybody's ready. We can resume. I think the next thing is, other business. We've, Director Tucker, you gonna take the lead on this?
Yes. Oh, excuse me. So last, well, I guess it's been maybe 2 months ago. There's two items on the agenda that are kind of related. One is more immediate than the other, if you will. As you know, we spoke last time, the Tri-Village News is no longer circulating. The rules as well as the code call out for notices to be provided in a paper. It's not really the way things are being done anymore. So there is a piece of legislation on the agenda before council introduced this past Monday to update the notification, very specifically having to do with public notice that's put in the paper by staff. So this doesn't have anything to do with the notices that are distributed by the applicants. But the changes are essentially, they're highlighted in red in your application or copy of ordinance there. And it does two things. One is that it updates the requirement, and the second thing is that it centralizes the requirement. So, so all the things are in one place in terms of what has to be done. So I just bringing before the board this evening for your review and concurrence or approval, or I guess not, if you don't like it, recommendation to bring back to council. And then we have asked that they consider passage at the mid-month of the second reading, so that we can have this in place before notices need to go out for April. So
Very similar, almost identical to ordinance already passed by council pertaining to other notice requirements in the codified ordinances.
Right.
Can't say it's exactly identical, but it's close.
If it's not, it's
Yeah.
intended to be, it
Yeah.
actually it is, actually word for word the same.
Yeah, it's because of the drafting sections that I don't think it's exactly.
Well, yeah, they're,
Yeah.
for instance, in terms of the posting intention, it's
Yep.
the same,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I don't have any comment, I don't know. Anybody else says it's essentially, it's getting rid of the This Week News and referring back to, it gets posted on the website and a physical copy posted at City Hall.
Did we talk anywhere about the little yard sign that goes up?
Yeah, that's in there, that's the next paragraph E
It doesn't change.
after that.
It is in the same, right, it's in 1147.
Right.
It used to be, the notices were in one place and the,
Right.
well,
And the yard signs.
they were in two different
Good.
places, so we're also getting them
Right.
all in one place.
Right.
That's what's different than the other ordinance.
Yeah.
That's all I meant.
Makes sense. I'm
Yeah.
glad we found a solution.
Yep.
So, a recommendation from the board would be lovely, I don't know that it has to be anything formal,
Yes,
right?
this doesn't have to
So,
be like a
head-
formal
head
motion.
nod.
This is just,
Do you need a formal motion? Should we
think-
take a
I
formal
don't-
motion?
I don't think so, but.
you know, I think comfortable formally recommending as presented.
All right, very good. The corollary, immediate, if you will, change to the application, also is embedded in the application, as well. Get to, just don't have page numbers, but section 6 is notices. The letter A there also goes into some detail about noticing. It seems as though we could replace that section with a reference to the
Yes.
legislation, although this is instructions to, it conveys what's gonna happen to the applicants.
Yes.
So, you know, you could refer to the legislation, or you could reiterate the legislation here. I don't know if there's a common way of doing it.
I think as the director said, you know, some of this is a restatement of things, it's more for the benefit of the applicant. So it's probably, you know, even though it's probably easier and cleaner, just refer to a code section. You know, I think you know, while an attorney that is representing an applicant would be fine with that, you know, as they call them down at the State House, Bob and Betty Buckeye might not appreciate having to go into the codified ordinances.
Right.
And, you know, so I should come up with an alliteration for Grandview residents. Bob and Betty Buckeye. I'll work on that. So yeah, I think a restatement of what the codified ordinance becomes might be appropriate there. It doesn't have to be word for word, it could be, you know, even summarized, simplified, rather.
And as far as alterations to this document,
Yeah.
what does it take? It just takes,
You all,
it just takes us
yeah.
approving that.
The board has the power to
Yeah.
approve its own rules,
Yeah.
as long as they comply with the statutory scheme that's outlined for you.
That we talked about, maybe changing the cost of that.
Yes, broadly, I think, we got going on a lot of changes, discussion of a lot of changes, and that is here tonight, kind of revisit some of those things that came up, this past time, so we can walk through those. I think from a you know, clarity perspective, it may make sense, because we know what we're doing with regard to section 6, letter A, to go ahead and update that and get that out on the website as soon as council changes the legislation at the minimum. And then it may take longer to get through the rest of the document to make additional changes. We might kind of be looking at revising the rules and procedures twice, if you will.
So, for 6A, before we move on, before we move on to anything else, then, for 6A, do we have a proposed different language? Or Did we come up with that, right?
Side by side.
I would just put starting at the underlined section of chapter 147 probably. Take that section.
Yeah, but I mean, in this case, the applicant is not the one who posts a notice at City Hall, right? Right.
Correct, it's the secretary of the board, it's Megan.
And the applicant does not put it on the website, right? So I guess,
Correct.
yeah, so upon filing the application or notice of appeal, yeah, secretary shall give notice thereof by, and then
Yeah.
essentially then it's the,
Mhm. In accordance with chapter 1147,
yeah, but I think, Okay.
including posting, whatever, we
There.
can pick up a little bit of language there. Yeah, I'm
Right.
sorry, we should have probably prepared that, so I didn't do that. Matt,
Mhm.
would it be acceptable, reasonable, to circulate a proposal via email after this, or do the changes need to happen?
Since changing the rules requires an official action from the board, I would recommend we not circulate something like that through email. We might inadvertently trigger
Well,
public meeting
Yep.
requirements,
Yep,
so,
no problem.
but we could certainly have, something, prepared for the next, board meeting, and they can't adopt anything today on changing that notice provision anyway, because the code section hasn't changed. We have to wait for the effective date of that.
I can't
anyway.
actually vote on it tonight because the
Right.
vote hasn't changed. Okay,
Yeah,
great.
so,
Mhm.
in many ways, it would have been premature to
okay.
have a completely drafted new rule package for you anyway.
Because if we were to vote to approve to change that right now, that would
You
be
can't do that.
contradictory to the current.
Yeah, current code says you have to
Current code
use,
says,
yeah.
right, okay, that makes sense.
current code doesn't spell out the tri-village rules do, but,
Also, we'll bring an updated exhibit to our April meeting, and you can vote on it then, but I
Right.
think we understand the intent.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like that's gonna be contentious.
You guys, just to be perfectly clear, you guys prefer to reference the code, but also delineate the actions in the generic at least? Yes.
Do we prefer to reference the code? Because I don't know that we reference the code many other places in this document, do we? I just,
You do.
It would point out
Yeah.
a more complete version of the statement. If we care to read more.
I mean, it's taken from the code, but we don't, well, there's one. Prohibited by section 1152.3, but other,
I think it doesn't hurt if it's, as long as you keep the verbiage for section 6A, be generic.
Yeah.
And we get the point across, but it doesn't hurt to be.
Also, when there is a code involved, it may be a good practice to reference the code.
I just think it creates an audit trail back to.
Right, yeah.
okay. I'm good with that.
We'll work on that for April. All right. 8:35, if you, and that is here, if you care to go back through some of the comments that we provided before, we have all the parties in the room.
Yeah, I think this is the right time to do it.
All right, Matt, you have the chicken scratch I sent you.
Were there any
Yeah, we printed it off.
particular questions about from last time?
I don't know that we have a lot of questions, but I
Yeah.
think.
The special meeting
Other
we got
than-
excited about.
We
I can
did.
just come to your door and
Yeah, right.
Two of us come to your door.
Right. But yeah, I think we did have some questions just about like what legal would say about some of these things, so I think it's a good time to get back to
The
it.
answer is always it depends.
Right, yes.
Brilliant. So I have my chicken scratch from last time. If you'd like, I can lead us back through a
Yeah.
conversation with Matt here.
Yeah.
So first,
We can-
topic
we can run it.
was
Some other requirements, we're starting on
Yeah.
organization, section 2. So the first question was, is this required, appointing someone, is appointing someone a requirement, or of the board specifically to appoint whomever, in this case, current?
Yeah, it was the secretary. So that
Yeah.
section 2A is that we normally never appoint secretary. It's just always been named.
By way of context, beyond this body, I know that the administration has noticed that we don't have a lot of depth in our clerking. So there's actually nobody to pick up for Megan if she's not here right now. So they're looking at ways to provide some depth. And I don't know if that plays into this or not.
Yeah, I apologize on this particular one. I don't know if that is a code requirement. I don't believe it is. So, but I can go back and look at that. You know, the clerk is a, you know, city employee in this instance and,
Right.
you know, serves in that capacity. So I think, you know, this is one, it's probably just a quick check, to see if that's actually a codified, action that you need to undertake, but I don't believe
I
that
guess-
it is.
Because the other side of that is, well, what if the board what if we appoint a person, what if we decide
Appoint them?
to not be Megan? Like,
Right.
how would that work?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we would do that.
Yeah, no, I mean,
But
it's
it doesn't seem like.
right, so it's a fairly common, you know, some of these, I think, you know, I don't know when these rules were last put together or updated, but it's a fairly common, you know, with a board or a commission that will appoint, you know, one of the members to be the secretary of such a thing. And there would still be a clerk that actually takes down, it's just that the secretary is, who's responsible for technically of submitting like the reports to higher committees, things like that. So for example, at the State House, the tradition is that the ranking member, so the highest ranking minority party member on the committee is appointed. It's usually done without objection, although sometimes the ranking member tries to object. It is the appointed as a secretary, and so then when, say, for example, the committee votes on referring a piece of legislation to the Rules Committee, which then sends it up to the floor, it's actually the secretary, quote unquote, the ranking member, that submits that report. That's all that, it's just a
Yeah.
parliamentary
And it-
thing, and
and in our
that's
case,
my
I don't know
suspicion
what-
here, but I didn't have time today to
Yeah.
dig into that particular,
Yeah, I don't know what a secretary would do for us.
Right.
If we appointed somebody as the secretary.
All right, well, Matt.
And there's no reference, for example, in the notice requirements in 1147 to secretary, for example. So that's why my suspicion is that that's just a term of art.
Yeah, I mean, the next paragraph does give one job to the secretary
Mhm.
to certify the membership of the board,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure what that means either.
So this is a continued question for Matt to
Yep.
research and
Yep.
sort that out, I would say.
I had a question on section 2, part D, which is if the absence of the chairman, a member of the longest remaining term of the board shall act as chairman, which
Right.
would in this case be me in this case, which would be the person with the least amount of experience with the board. So I guess my question would be, is that really?
Yeah, well, I mean, the whole thing is, I mean, C and D, we also have questions about, right?
Yeah,
So-
we do.
oh, yeah,
We
typically.
have
So-
lots of questions.
Really, the whole section on organization.
Yeah, that
So C
that
is,
can be changed, yeah.
we never do a chair for 2 years, we always do 1.
Yeah.
And we usually do a calendar year, not this ending on the second Wednesday of October or every other time.
Yeah.
Like,
Mr. Chairman, I think it would be an apt suggestion if this were revised, not only to elect a chairman, but also perhaps elect a vice chair, which I believe we
that is
informally
what-
have.
that is what we-
And
Yeah.
so,
Yes.
to address your fellow board members' concerns about being thrust into
Right.
being the impromptu chair, if you
Right.
will, the chair pro tem. I think that's something that would be within purview of a rules rewrite. Yeah. So if I'm hearing right, what you'd like to hear is see is not only a chair, like a chair and a vice chair, but for 1 year and coincide with the calendar.
Yes,
Yeah. I think we can do that.
yeah, okay.
For clarity for
Mhm.
myself, are you going
Yeah.
to work on edits
Next question.
or mine?
Like,
It's a great question that you and I can figure out later, okay?
Right. That
I-
really means me, so.
I do have a question on D. What if there happens to be a case where the chairman and the vice chair happen to be both off? Is
Do you
that
say-
something to elaborate in D?
Chairman
I
or
mean,
vice chair?
I'm not saying
or
it happens very often,
longest
that has never happened, but there's
Um,
always an opportunity, I don't.
I mean, in all honesty, I can't imagine an applicant unless they had a slam dunk case that clear.
It's happened
You know,
though.
we've had applicants go with just 3 of us here,
Yeah.
where
You're kidding.
they know it's, I mean, things they know are slam dunk, fences in the side yard. you
Yeah,
know.
I mean, I think in that instance, something simple as, the person that's served the longest on the board.
Right.
Is probably appropriate at that point.
Right,
for
we probably
reading
just need to-
numbers, but.
Yeah, add that in.
That was my only.
No, that's a good point.
There have been occurrences where we've been down to, so.
Yes?
Yeah.
Yep.
And y'all gonna have to do that.
Had what?
We have a secretary.
Why doesn't it go
Certified.
those?
Got it.
All right, do you remember this, do we have any comments
So
on,
the next,
other than special
the
committee?
next questions that we had were on F in the next section. Applications for district extensions, exceptions. We wanted to add demolition, aesthetic review, variances, conditional use permits, which you don't do. So
Okay,
that
well-
section,
Hold on, let's back up
Wait.
to,
BZA doesn't do,
conditional use.
who use conditional uses?
planning commission.
That's statutory. We'll look that up.
That's a good
It's
question.
It's in, planning commission's powers and duties, yes.
Okay.
Planning commission. They handle all the fun
All
stuff.
conditional uses. Lot splits, there's a few other
Lot,
things
yeah,
that
lot
they do.
splits.
Yeah, no, I knew about
Zoning
that.
changes. They do all.
That's unique, that's why I just want to look at it, because that's very unique.
So, but if we, I want to go back to A of that section 4, because if we're not having a secretary, because this calls out things the secretary does, and I think we were, in our minds, we were thinking of Megan as the secretary. But Matt, you're saying that really Megan's the clerk. Do we need to change these things to, call the members to order and
Well,
direct?
I need to look,
Clerk.
let me, like I
Okay.
said, I need to go and see what perhaps what the origin of the term secretary is, because it may, there may be a reason that term's used instead of clerk. But,
Okay. So yeah, I think anywhere in these rules that it says secretary is worth clarifying.
Yeah. There are some things in here, for instance, in the organization chapter of the BZA, it says the chairman or in his or her, doesn't say that.
So-
Absence, the acting chairman may administer oaths and the board may compel the attendance of witnesses. So it looks like there's some just alignment, chair, vice chair, acting chair.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm guessing, by the way, on the CUP issue, because I said that's unique, I found the thing, I mean, every other jurisdiction I've worked in, it's the BZA that hears CUPs. I'm guessing these rules were lifted in part from something else, and that could also, well, it says secretary, it says clerk, et cetera, yeah. But that,
F, the fact that it includes conditional use.
yeah, no, that's what I'm saying, it is.
Copy and paste it from somewhere else. So,
Some other jurisdiction.
from another
Yes,
jurisdiction.
yeah, that, because like I said, that's why, you caught me off guard, like, because I've been other zoning cases, and what do you mean, BZA here's CUPs?
Not here.
Grandview always surprised.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarification.
Mhm.
So what else in that particular, in F, besides just cleaning up, we'll go through the section in 1147, or not 1147, excuse me, in the powers and duties, for the section for the BZA.
Right, under
Is there-
F, I
is there
think
something else in there?
district extensions is not something that BZA would do here.
Yep.
Exceptions, I'm not sure we have that actually defined in the code. Variances we do, conditional uses should not be in there. Notices of appeal of what would that be?
It's-
That's
Of his.
yes,
Yeah.
we have had that happen.
determination. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this is really just aligning the code with
Mhm.
what the board's charges
Yep.
are.
The only, I think the second part of it, we talked about the applications or requests being heard before the board received by their secretary by 5 PM. If that is me, my end of day is 4 o'clock. I'm not trying to be technical here, but,
Well,
and we
does
do
that,
have
does
a,
actually align with the date that we actually require them?
Yeah, just the next to last Monday of the calendar.
it doesn't, no, it should probably be per the
The schedule,
submission matrix or the,
The published schedule
yes.
attached here too.
Oh, she's like,
That's the-
no.
So the next one I have us asking question of legal counsel is H here. There was a question as to whether, the within 30 days, so.
Yeah, I believe that is statutory,
But I'm not really sure what it's saying. It's basically mandating we must make a decision at that meeting, because we're not gonna be at another meeting.
Well,
sorry, so,
I think the issue is, let's say we have a long month, and you're meeting the first time, you decide to have a continuance of the case, and you don't hear the case. Because it's midnight, and we heard 6 cases, and we needed a nap, we didn't get to the 7th case. Then if the next meeting is 31 days later,
Right.
that's not good enough.
usually this is in other board rules, I just did a quick scan, I didn't see anything in the code, but, I'll go back and look at that again, in more detail, but, usually it's more better when, not the decision, but when the case is heard. Because it's not uncommon, as you guys know, for a case to be heard and perhaps tabled for the applicant to bring a revised submission. It's also, some BZAs will, hear, an application and then at their next meeting will take the action so that there's, time for them to have, I guess, deliberated, in private on that. So we can let me look a little further at that. But it'd probably be better to have that more of when, I mean, you have the criteria for when application is first heard. At the first meeting after publication of notice. I think it's
Well-
probably more,
I mean, this H says both of those things. It says it should be heard at the
yeah,
first meeting.
so I'm saying it's already
And then
covered there.
decided, but then the board
So,
shall decide.
oh, so,
Within
sorry,
30
you're
days.
right, and I misread that too. So that is, that's a pretty common statutory scheme, and that might even be in the revised code. I'll have to double check that. That is actually how it's laid out for like counties and townships for their BZAs. They do have to decide within a time certain, unless there's a continuance. Now, it's not normally the applicant's consent, it can be, the board can, and there's some, reasonableness in how long you can string something along, but that's, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess that's it, that's the
But
question,
obviously-
is it the 30 days or the applicant consent? Like, one of those seems like it would be good to be different, right? Either the board can have a continuance beyond the 30 days, we can decide on that, or the 30 days is too short. The situation that,
Why would the 30 days be too short?
From 1 month and you're on day 31. So it should have just say
Yeah,
at its
time
next
between our two
regularly
meetings is
scheduled
always
meeting
Mhm.
instead of 30 days.
Okay. I'll need to go back and look, because my concern is it's not something covered by grand use ordinances, so, which would be within its home rule powers, but if it's something that's laid out in the revised code, that would cover instead. And like I said, there are some timing mechanisms in some of the other chapters of the revised code. I tend not to have to look at the municipal side of things because of home rule. So I need to double check both of those. I get what you're saying about a calendar fluke on that, but I mean, you guys do tend to vote the day of,
Yes.
so there's actually, like, I actually don't know if that's really a,
we do, I've never,
Be a special case.
yeah.
And
And-
also,
and-
well, the dates can be really different, like, this one is on the 8th, it could be as early as the 8th, today's as early as it could ever be.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
since it's always on Wednesday, we're either talking 28 days or 35 days
Mhm.
between meetings. Right, it's either 4 weeks or 5 weeks.
Yes,
So that's,
essentially.
that's really,
Yeah, that's actually
yeah.
kind
We
of
all-
common.
But if you've, I mean, I don't think I've recalled a scenario with this board where an application has been tabled, where the applicant has been saying, no, please vote on it.
Right,
So, I mean, you have that consent usually.
right.
Um,
I guess
I
I
mean,
see
correct
this
me
as
if I'm
more
wrong,
of
but
a-
I've never been here and seen a scenario where you have gently suggested that something be tabled, so
Right.
they can bring you back some more information, and they said, oh, no, I want to vote today.
Right.
Um,
Well, I mean, we still ask the question,
mhm.
but it's telling if someone says no vote, then that probably means they're planning on an appeal. Right?
Perhaps, yeah.
But,
Or they just want the finality.
yeah,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, we did have that one time, now that I think about it, somebody forced the vote. But I guess I see this section as more of a, like a last resort kind, like I don't see it happening very often, but like, what if we're in the middle of a meeting and power goes out and doesn't come back on, and we're still held to, we have to make a decision on that case within 30 days. So we would have to, I guess, find another meeting time within 30 days in order to decide that, those sorts of things.
It seems like within 30 days, you just change it at its next regularly scheduled meeting, if you can.
Yeah, if it can.
I mean, I also believe, let me see if I can find it, but I believe you have the ability to call an additional meeting as well.
Yes.
So in that scenario,
Yeah.
I understand, but if you have that scenario where you've gone to 12:30
Right.
and you break, you're not actually ending that meeting, you're continuing it to the next, and, you know, arguably, and this is, I'm relying on some other jurisdictions, but if there's not a decision made, even if you, so for example, the scenario I laid out where something was heard and then they come back and vote on it at the next hearing, that application was just continued, it wasn't even tabled. So these are just different terms of art, but, you know, so, you know, in that scenario, they wouldn't have violated the 30-day statutory scheme. That was, the one I'm thinking of is a township. They have very strict, they can only do exactly what the revised code says. They never violated that because it was just a continuation of the same hearing. It just took place over 6 months.
This might be into the details too much, but in that case, then technically, the language of saying at our next meeting might conflict because that first part of whatever that next meeting time would be would actually be the end of the pre-existing meeting, right? Like technically.
Yeah.
Could you define continuance versus tabling for my benefit?
I mean, I think tabling is you're ending the consideration entirely for the application as it stands there.
Mhm.
Whereas a continuance is you're not done considering it. So the applicant's not necessarily bringing anything back. So, you know, if you know, it's a very controversial project and you have 50 people lined up to testify in favor of it and 50 people lined up to testify opposed to it, you could continue it over multiple hearings, but you don't need to table it. You're not taking it off the agenda. If you table it, you're technically taking it off the agenda until it's ready to be brought back forward.
And with a continuance, the applicant would not be able to revise their application. Is that correct?
No, I mean, they certainly could if they, you know, say there was a point of contention between the applicant and staff, yeah, that could be changed.
Well, like, for this case today,
Mhm.
if we had continued it,
Mm-hmm.
would he be able to?
Well, I don't, you guys don't have that.
Yeah,
in here,
well,
so-
and I guess that's the question, but if we did, is that, basically, is that a way then he wouldn't have, that an applicant wouldn't have to do, could submit?
You would
drawings, but
absolutely
wouldn't
have to hear that case at your next hearing.
Right. but-
Whereas it's tabled, if he's not ready, then you don't have to hear it.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
But would there have to be notice sent out to the neighbors for the next hearing, if it's a continuance?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
I mean, the way notice is handled in Grandview,
Right.
yeah, I mean, you would
Okay.
have to send out the certified,
Right, okay.
yeah, nailed it.
So it's the difference of tabling allows them to, let's say they don't wanna come in April, they wanna come in May. Continuance, they have to be seen in April. Did I
They
get
have
that
to come to the
correct?
next
For the next one, if it was,
You mean the applicant?
yes.
one. Well,
Well, I think
It-
at that
it
point,
has
if
to be on
they're
the agenda.
pending months, I think they would, that would be tabled,
yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. But I mean, we're not talking about doing, I was just using that as an example of where something can stretch out over months,
Yes.
and it's, yeah, you guys don't get those, here. That's a, yeah.
How we go?
So that this section is saying we provide a notice when you have to hear the case,
Mm-hmm,
but you don't have to decide the case that night.
yeah.
But you have to decide it within 30 days of when
When
it is
it's
supposed to be.
And that's why I wanna look at that a little further, because that's a due process issue as well for the applicant.
Sure.
Different issue.
You know, if you guys leave something indefinitely, you know, that's unfair, to an applicant.
Okay, so now let's move on.
Yep.
All right, the next question I had was, the request for a tabling on the next one. It says the applicant shall submit a letter requesting tabling no less than 3 days before the meeting if they cannot attend. we've generally been more flexible than that.
Yes.
Let's,
I don't see an issue, I mean, I don't,
the board can.
I don't even think it needs to say submit a letter, I think a written request, you know, prior to the meeting.
And, yeah, okay.
Yeah, that seems fair. I mean, so,
The
an
three
email to
days.
Megan would count.
Yeah.
Let's say in a case like this evening, there's only one case on the agenda, it would result in the meeting being canceled. So the nice thing about letting us know beforehand is that we have an opportunity to notify,
Right.
or at least
Sure.
post something somewhere that says the meeting's canceled. So I would say that's a good policy.
Mhm.
If they wanna vary from that though, they can.
Well, wait, I'm sorry, I don't understand, I guess I don't
Here's
understand
the
the question.
question, keep it in the rules as 3 days, but if, yeah, if somebody emails Megan at lunchtime on
You guys have the
Wednesday,
right to suspend your rules.
Yeah, then
There is a mechanism in your rules for suspending the rules, so, I mean, that would be, if you keep it at 3 days, so you get, you know, whether it's they email the day of to, you know, to the offices or whatever, or it's a phone call, cause I got in a car accident, I get, like, yes, you can do that, there's a mechanism to do that, that's, yeah. The point about the 3 days is there for exactly that reason,
Yeah.
just, you know, letting
Everybody else
folks, yeah, everybody know that was planning on showing up, but.
The other
Like-
side of that question is if we don't get any notice that someone's not going to be here, and it's on the agenda, and there's no one here
Yeah.
on the applicant's side, by these rules, we must, within 30 days of that meeting, we must make a decision.
No, it says, if you read the next sentence, it says you may move to consider the application.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's up to you what you want to do. If you feel that you have, you know, sufficient grounds for whichever direction based off the staff report and the submissions from the applicant, you can certainly do that. It's their application. They choose to present it how they want. And, you know, I think this doesn't need to be in the rules, but I think a good practice would be, you know, at least if that happens one time, to table it, to afford them the opportunity to come to another meeting, because you don't know, they could have been in a car accident and
Right.
not been able to get there.
Right.
They could be sitting there and just decide to not present too. I mean, that, you know,
Yep.
that's a strategy, so.
Yep.
So I mean, I don't know if you're asking for that to be.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I was just kind of asking clarification, but you're right,
Okay.
it's right there. I should have just read the next sentence.
It's okay. I do that too.
The next item, K, I think is one of the things that is more substantive. I underlined the last sentence there about a copy of the minutes showing the disposition of each application or appeal being mailed to the applicant or the appellant. We have not, as a habit, been doing that. I think there is maybe a form in here, the
Mhm.
findings page.
Yeah.
As a matter of practice, I guess, can you expound on what maybe you've seen actually occur? Because the challenge with this is the
Mhm.
minutes don't
Yeah.
exist immediately, right? So,
Right, so you don't have to send those until those minutes are approved by the board. And the standing practice in Grandview at least has been a decision of the BZA is not final until those minutes are adopted at the, not always at the next meeting, but usually at the next meeting. And that's what triggers the, you know, if an applicant's application is rejected, for example, that's what triggers the clock for appealing, because that constitutes the order. It also, you know, as a matter of practice, if a variance is granted, for example, it is supremely helpful for the applicant to have that on file, because again, that variance runs with the land. You know, things like title searches or things like that, you know, it's helpful to have that on file. Obviously, the city has that, but the applicant or, you know, the design professional, the contractor, whomever, you know, should they get a question about it, you know, if there's some sort of miscommunication of, hey, you can't put that fence there, you know, complaint is lodged, you know, they can show, hey, no, I've got a variance, you know, so, yeah, it's a matter of record keeping for everybody. But yeah.
Do you, like if someone gets a fence variance, do they have to wait till it's recorded till you let them put the fence in? Or till we?
Variances aren't recorded.
Or not, I didn't mean record, I
Until the
meant.
minutes are
approved.
No, a lot of times
Tomorrow.
we issue the permit the following day.
Yeah,
You
people
know,
come in the next day, sure.
Should we be getting the motions on the last page recorded? I mean, council signs things that night, right? It's a little more, I say fluid, but it's a little more fluid than BZA. Sometimes the motions are,
So, I mean, I don't think it matters too much when the chair signs said order. You know, when I chaired Westerville's BZA, I signed one order once, and then they had my permission in writing to just use that as an e-signature going forward, for any actions of the board. That way I didn't have to leave work, and drive to
Right.
Westerville and sign stuff once a month, so.
But I guess part of your question, I guess, is also like, do we need, are the minutes good enough, or like, we don't do like a separate, we don't do a separate form for each applicant, do we?
No, I have not, no.
No.
yeah, I guess.
You, typically, if I were to fill out this form, I would go based off the minutes. I'm just
Yeah,
telling my perspective, so I would fill this form out based off of, therefore the board grants the following variance, aesthetic review, or,
but we probably are granting building permits or whatever before there's any formal record, if you will, and voted on. I mean, the vote would have happened, but the record wouldn't have been created necessarily.
The findings are more, to be perfect, the findings, this sheet is way more important in the instance of a rejection, and then a subsequent appeal. Because it's the findings of fact along with the minutes, if there's a transcription that shows the you know, the deliberations, the decision-making of the board, and if that can be defended in court.
and I think when we were talking about this form last time, there was some question about the way it's phrased, what's written in that,
so would the findings go?
There's,
as far as, it's just, it does or does not result in a practical difficulty.
I don't know. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, what was the question?
Just the way this, like, the way it's phrased, it's basically, it either does or does not result in practical difficulty.
Yep.
Those are the two options.
Because this is for a variance, this is not for an appeal.
And it's not for aesthetic review.
Nope.
Okay. Would that need to be a different form or not necessarily a form at all?
That's an excellent question. I believe the findings of fact are required for variances, and not necessarily required for the other things within your purview, but I need to double check that.
the aesthetic review does have, there's the design guidelines,
Yes,
right, but there's codified standards as well. It's not a variance,
yeah,
but it's a determination.
yeah.
All right, well, we can follow up on
Mhm.
more questions about this.
And then, I mean, I've got the form here, I see the question about, so you guys circled practical difficulty and wrote in Duncan standards. What's the question there?
I mean, yeah, I think the question was, is practical difficulty the right phrase to use on this
Yes.
form?
Yeah, in the Duncan case, this is practical difficulty meets.
Right, define
And here's
that,
the
yeah.
standards, yeah,
Right.
so, it's the same thing. We don't wanna write out all 7.
No.
It'd be a really long form.
No, we don't. And I don't think that was the thought. It was just,
Yep.
is there
No,
a
it's
different?
good, no, it's a good question, it's, yeah, so, it's a good question, in fact, I don't think Grandview's ordinance spells out the Duncan factors, it just says practical difficulty.
Yeah.
And that's, you have to go to the case law to know that. Some municipalities put out the Duncan factors in their code, and some don't. So, but that they're, everybody in this space knows them at this point, so. That might be something that, I don't have, or I do have the application in front of me. That might be something in the application itself that might be better to spell out for applicants, but that's something, that's a conversation you and I can have.
Yeah.
I'll find some point, just to help them. For example, like today, the applicant today, could have spent more time going through, the Duncan factors as opposed to some of the other rationale, for his project. But that's also his presentation, it's what he wants to do.
All right. Next thing I have noted is the filing fees, $25.
At
Um,
0.
At zero, yeah. Well, this is $300.
At 0.
Non-zero.
I mean, yeah, what's the,
Do you guys have recommendations?
yeah.
I was gonna do some research and I haven't done that yet, but you did a couple, didn't you look at a couple on that, that range between, I think, 150, some were still 50.
We were looking, it was somewhere between 100 and 350, or somewhere around that. I can't remember the specific
I
municipalities.
really.
But we're
do need to
definitely the
increase it.
cheapest.
And
It's
is the
so
thought,
much work and printing and.
that's what I'm wondering, the thought is covering costs, or the thought is limiting the frivolous application?
Well, I think
mean,
it's
I don't-
twofold, yeah,
but-
one.
So,
I guess I say that because I don't think we have
if I may, this is statutory.
the
$25 is statutory?
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm in, make sure I'm in the right code section, yeah, 1139.06, single family, $25, two family to less than 25 dwelling units, $50.
So we can change the code
Right, that's city
and then,
council.
and then refer to, right.
Non-residential applications is 100.
Right, so we need to change the code and then we can change both applications for BZA and planning commission to refer to it. But we need your recommendation. What do you want it to be?
Right.
What is the section we're looking at?
Oh, sorry.
1139.06.
We'll come to those council
Sorry,
meetings
okay.
for you, Bob.
1139.
We'll come to those council meetings for you.
Good notice.
Alright, the next one I had was, we already talked about notice.
Yes, exactly, notice.
Also, that application section should not say conditional use permits.
Yeah, I caught that.
It should say some other things that we do.
Oh, right.
Alright, then I had, in the notice section, there's some other places, things that it's saying that are not right. It's talking, oh no, I'm sorry, section 7. No, section 6, there's, authorization of conditional use, and this and that and the other thing are listed in here, so that whole, the BC, all of that just needs lined up with, what you guys actually do. B does. C, notice, Certified mail, so here was a question, is it sent, the notices? Is it that the applicant has to show proof that they're sent or proof that they're received?
Right, that was the question.
Well, the receipts are what's filed. So,
The receipts of the sending.
Is it of the set, or is it of the, it's the receipt you get back?
no, it's the receipt you get when it's delivered, so,
Yeah,
I mean, that's,
it's the certified mail receipt.
yeah, I mean, that's what the little green things.
Yeah.
Should we put that in there? You should get one.
Little green things.
I mean, that's what, I mean, that's what's filed with Megan, so.
All right,
Yeah,
I mean, I,
gotcha. All right, that was just a question.
yeah, I mean, I think that's, I mean, it could certainly, I guess, get cleaned up to be a little bit more clear, but that's, I believe that's referring to the receipts that Megan includes as part of the application packet.
Of delivery.
What, now,
Yeah.
you know, there's all kinds of policy questions on whether that's the most effective, you know, I mean, for example, like today, would be the third time this is gonna send out certified mail, and, that's a different question, so.
Yeah. What have you seen?
I mean, it's, that ranges everywhere from, the city undertakes notice requirements for, notice.
For the case.
Yeah, for the case, you know, and that can be everywhere from the city takes care of figuring out who should get notice to it's on the applicant to provide a list of everybody that's within square footage of the application to Columbus has, I think, one of the more unique ones where you actually have to provide them the mailing labels and as part of your application. And that's usually one of the things, you know, you spend the most time on, at least I do, preparing an application, because it's the one thing I don't want to get called back in to bring them a bunch of labels, so, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so it's all over the place, but
All right, well, we
every
can talk
city's a
about
little
whether we
different
want to change it, but I think we've answered the question as far as you're concerned for
Mhm.
today. The next one I have was on E there, it says the board may, by affirmative vote of 4 members, dispense with requirements of publications and notices for minor variances, which in the opinion of the concurring 4 members, the board will have no adverse effect upon neighboring properties. So the question became is if there's, if it can be 3.
Mhm. So one, this lines up with if you go to section 11 with suspending the rules, and that's also 4. Look at, I actually brought a Robert's Rules with me, but I believe that, so I could look it up to be extra sure, but I'm pretty sure you need a supermajority of some kind to suspend the rules.
Of the members, not those present,
Yes.
so.
And that, I mean, that's also consistent, for example, you need to vote, you know, to approve a project, an application, you need the majority of the board, not those present. So that's why,
Correct.
we were talking earlier, I don't know why an applicant would ever take the risk of, if there are only 3 of you here.
No.
Yeah,
Well, yeah,
because it just takes 1 in that scenario.
yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
It does happen a lot.
that's good.
Maybe you guys are too lenient then.
Yeah, maybe we're just too nice.
I don't think you can change that. I mean, I can look into that, but, I mean, I think that's 4 for a reason. But I haven't, confess, I've not researched that particular point.
So if that happens, do they have to then continue it?
In that instance, so where somebody didn't follow their notice,
Yeah, it
um,
does happen occasionally.
Yeah, well, I mean, but really where that comes up is where we discover through this process, like, oh, you also need this other variance. Like,
Yeah.
in the middle of this,
Mhm.
this hearing, that's really where it comes up. And we have not, in the past, taken a formal vote to dispense with the requirements of notification. Because they're in here for 2 variances, and we go, well, wait a minute, if you're doing, you actually need you know, 6-inch variance here. So then we turn it in and we vote
Well,
on it.
I mean, I would go a step further. I mean, I don't know what a minor variance is.
Right.
That's not a defined term.
Yes.
And so I'm not sure how you're deciding on the fly what's a minor variance to suspend your rules for notice requirements. You know, I do think the argument may be here's where it depends, right? You've already got people here noticed for the application. It is not uncommon for an application to change during the course of that hearing. Maybe you add conditions, maybe the applicant agrees to a 3-foot setback instead of a 4-foot setback. All things that are very common. That doesn't require a formal vote just to change now the scope of the hearing. Oh, well, now we're talking about a different variance. We have to, hold on. So I think this is more,
I'll give you one.
yeah.
Side yard setback 6 on both sides, 12 total.
Mhm.
Caught the 6 on both sides, didn't catch the 12 total, but it's obvious
Mhm.
that the variance would also need to apply to the 12 total.
Okay.
That's a minor variance, in my opinion, because it's already kind of included in this.
But we're already hearing it for.
Yeah, but it is,
Yeah.
it's
You're
adding a variance, it's not just modifying one of the variances that's already on the agenda.
I understand, but, I mean, I think then, in that case, then, I suppose, according to the rules, you need to have a motion of 4 people to suspend your rules, and
To suspend the rules.
since you didn't notice that particular variance, but,
So if there's 3 people here that day, that just can't happen.
but, again, you say that's a minor variance, but had that been caught on the initial application, it would have just been listed with the other variances, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So you're capitalizing minor.
I'm saying the problem there overall is I'm not sure we have a good definition of what a minor variance actually is, because any variance to the code is a variance. So whether, I mean, if staff gets plans submitted to them and it would have an encroachment of, 6 inches, that is a minor variance. If you go to the Duncan factors of substantiality, it's not a very big variance, right? Looks like it's gonna be granted. But we wouldn't put out a notice saying, we have an application for minor variance. We would say, we have an application for variance. So I actually, my more issue here is just with the term minor. I don't think we can make that distinction. I'm not sure.
But you would, I'm gathering from this conversation, you may be okay with the concept of varying notice, but you take out the word minor.
I mean,
it
the
almost-
board has, we have in the past where it was, I can't remember the case now. Joe, you might remember, we've had definitely one where, and Rick, you might remember, where the person said, like, they were missing one of their green receipts, and it's like, I have proof that I mailed it out, I have proof, like, I went to their door, like, all that stuff, and
Yeah.
we voted to suspend the notice requirement in that, so clearly there was an attempt made.
Right.
I can't remember which case that was, and it was it was a more contentious
Mhm.
application as well, and that was an appropriate thing to do, in that scenario. Clearly, the applicant had made an attempt under following the spirit of the rules.
Yeah, I think this rule's fine. I mean, really, the question was really about the 4. That was really the question.
Yeah.
And I see what you're saying. This is really, essentially, this is a suspension of the rules.
Yes.
And which calls for 4.
Yeah.
I also see your point about just get rid of the word minor. Because the phrase after that kind of goes on to define minor, right? It says, one that will have no adverse effect on neighboring
Yeah.
property.
I mean, you're making that determination anyway with
Right.
variance, so.
Yeah.
Boy, appeals, we're gonna do appeals.
No. That looks like it's statutory, so I'm just gonna leave it alone.
Yeah, and this is actually, so, Liz, before your time here, I think we've looked at this one before, because there's not, I mean, thankfully appeals don't come up very often, but you don't really have, like, you know, you have your procedure on your agenda, here's how a variance goes. We don't really have that for an appeal. So that's a bigger question, I think, than just tonight, but.
Okay.
Mhm.
I don't think that we've ever, in my time,
Yeah.
had an appeal
Mhm.
come to us.
Yes.
Can you give an example? I'm not even sure what that is. That's an
Sure.
appeal of a previous decision we made, or that's an appeal of something the building department
It's an
did?
appeal of something that he
Okay,
decides.
okay, that's what,
But they can
Yeah,
also
we may
appeal,
have.
they can appeal their decision, correct?
Yeah, that's not this, though. Yeah, that's different, so, yeah.
Yeah, but they can appeal something I wrote on adjudication letter or something, they
Right.
can appeal
Yeah.
that for you.
So, real world example, one that we had in Westerville, when I, during my time as chair, somebody had put up, a screen or a fence between their house and their neighbor's house, because the neighbor was getting upset that they had a basketball hoop up and the kids were playing basketball, the ball kept going over there, trampling their flowers, all that stuff. So they put this giant thing up.
12-foot fence.
Okay, well, that was so the code enforcement dinged them for they called it a structure, and that it was not permitted, it had not been permitted, there weren't plans submitted, you know, all that kind of stuff. They appealed that, and also because it was in the setback, because it was on the property line, and you can't put a structure there. So they appealed that, and the appeal was that no, is actually a fence,
Yeah.
and can be on that property line. So that's why I came to the BZA for an appeal. Why it also mattered was, though, so we had to decide the appeal, and then a month later they had to come back for the variance. So we had to decide first whether, the BZA had to decide whether it was, we agreed with the zoning inspector that it was a structure, not a fence. And then, depending on which one they were gonna need a variance no matter what, but depending on which one we sided with, then that dictated the next step. We decided it was a structure, by the way.
Yeah.
All right, you and I can follow up as to process.
Yeah.
For that. On voting, section 8, I had underlined a question about whether the last sentence, the vote of the abstaining member shall be recognized
Yeah,
without an affirmative.
I'm not sure the rationale for that. I'll have to go back and look. That might be a.
Yeah, that was the question, was,
Yeah. You can let me know. I think
in fact, it doesn't just say, it says, in the case of the majority of members voting on such a motion in the affirmative, then the vote of the abstaining member shall be recognized as an affirmative.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
4-0 with an abstain, then it becomes 5.
Then it becomes 5. Yeah, I don't really
Be
understand.
left out, I guess.
Yeah, I don't understand.
is that, why is that?
I guess.
You'll let us know why that is.
Yeah, I think that could probably come out, but I'll double check. Was there a question on reconsideration?
I think 9 is just,
Okay.
that's how I recall anyway, Council Robert's rules being conducted.
I call it the Harry Reid
I don't
maneuver.
think there's an
Yeah,
issue there.
and then leave it on the table.
What's
Yeah.
that?
It says haven't been tabled, it may be taken up for
Mhm.
action at any time.
Yep. So where that would come up, why I call it the Harry Reid maneuver, is where you might vote on an application. You might have an applicant that, so there's a clear path presented by staff, say in the staff report, that, you know, if this fence height is reduced from, you know, given, you know, it's along a busy street, so, you know, understanding the applicant's desire for privacy, can't approve a 10-foot fence, height fence, but if the applicant were to reduce it to 7 feet, so it's, is it 6 feet? Is it? Yeah, so 7 feet to give them that extra little bit of privacy over that busy street, might reconsider the recommendation for disapproval. And the applicant is obstinate and refuses. They're like, no, absolutely not. I want 10 feet and I want you to vote on 10 feet. Now, you might take a vote and all vote 5-0 to reject it, and the applicant would say, okay, message received. I'll do 7. If you'll give me 7, I'll do 7. So that would be the scenario where then somebody who's on the prevailing side would make a motion to reconsider, to bring it back up. They may want, staff may want new plans submitted or something reflecting, for whatever reason, the 7 feet. Now I'm kind of painting myself in the corner because I probably wouldn't need that, but you get where I'm going. So I call it the Harry Reid because the maneuver legislatively is the presiding officer of the body, the Speaker of the House or the Senate President, votes actually with the other side than where they actually want to be, so that they can make the motion to reconsider.
Right.
So Harry Reid would do that all the time.
Okay.
Not the only one, but.
Yeah.
Many times.
Yep. So, and all it means is, if somebody makes the motion to reconsider, somebody else can move to lay that motion on the table if nobody else wants to re-vote on it. I mean, that's all that means, so, yeah. So if it's a 3-2 and somebody is trying to make you redo it and the other two don't want to do it. So.
Section 10,
Mm-hmm.
this was Rick's comment, question as to whether we can make the
Gender
gender
neutralized, yeah.
references be
Do that.
There was a
Yeah.
couple, earlier there was a couple.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
a,
that can
there's
easily
a
done.
in there.
That's easy. Which is actually, so by the way, going back to motion to reconsider, a common area, if you guys are having applicants showing up when there's only 3 of you and they want to move forward, that's where that can come in handy. Because if, let's say you think you know where all 3 of you are and one of you votes no, and then the applicant like, oh my gosh, that's where probably the right thing to do at that point is somebody to make that motion and explain, like, we can bring it back when we have more members. Maybe you'll get a different, so. That way somebody doesn't lose 2-1 on something that might have passed 4-1.
But in order to reconsider, then you would have,
One of the 2 has to make the motion
one of the 2 who voted
to reject.
to reject.
Yeah.
Right.
It's whoever's on the winning side of the motion.
But I guess in that situation where there's only 3 of us.
Or let's say.
Isn't the winning side could be the one no vote?
No. But.
Because
flip it around the other way.
you need 3 yeses.
Right, so let's say it was 2 yeses and 1 no,
Right.
then the 2 yeses can make the motion to reconsider.
But the no side prevailed because the application
Oh, you're
was
right,
not
no, you're right, I
approved.
see what you're saying, sorry, I got myself.
That's sort of the point.
Yeah,
Oh, I know, but I just wanted to make sure.
That-
we're not
that's
talking about-
where you as the
we're
chair,
not talking
you
about
can
the
hold the
majority of
Harry
the
Reid
votes. We're
and
talking
change your
about
vote
the
to a no,
prevalence.
and then you can make the motion.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry, I got myself hooked around with mine.
Yeah.
Sorry. 4, I think already talked about supermajority for suspending the rules. Special meetings, here was the big question, really? Notice shall be
This is so
served
weird.
personally upon each member at their usual place of residence 24 hours before the fixed meeting time. The chairman shall do this.
Or the Carolyn group.
Right.
This is emergency procedure, basically, some BZA.
This fence has to go up today.
I mean, yeah, you could have I guess theoretically, yeah, you could have
By email, by text, by phone call.
yeah, I mean,
By
we
carrier
could probably,
pigeon, can we say whatever we want?
I can double check, but we might be able to update at least how the notice of the special meeting goes out. But you need to have, you need to have a provision to have meetings other than your regularly scheduled meetings.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Mhm.
Going around to people's houses might be the most inefficient way.
I mean, it's a small
It's a
community.
small town,
Yeah.
it's
We can do
fair,
that.
it's fair.
Walkable community.
It's true. Number 15, resignation of a member shall not take effect until a successor is.
Yeah, I'm not sure about where that,
Yeah, that one,
that, so.
that one could be tough to enforce.
Be an ideal world, but.
And where does that come from, though?
I don't,
You don't know.
no, I don't.
We think it can be just struck.
I will double check that before we make an assumption.
Is there something to replace it with instead? I don't know, but that would,
If someone wants to resign, I guess, I think we mentioned this last time, is how, we can't have much, how we stop that.
right.
Here's the question, I guess. I mean, if they move out of the city, they can't be on the board.
Can't be on board.
But if the board only has 4 members, because council hasn't appointed somebody new, then what's a supermajority look like?
It's still 4.
So 4, we just have.
The
What if 2
BZA
people
is,
resign
but the BZA is 5
and they
members.
move out of the
BZA
city,
is 5.
then what?
You still need,
Then we
Just
need,
can't operate.
right, then we need council to
yeah,
move fast.
it's laid out in code. The BZA consists of 5 members appointed by city council. So,
Well, and is this in here because of that? Because
it
we're
might
still
be,
like
that's what, yeah,
nitpicky alignment reasons they thought that we needed to
yeah,
say that.
it might be, so I'll look at that.
Alright. And then 16, adoption of rules.
Oh, I see what you're saying on that. It's essentially the resignation of a member does not take place. They may leave town and not be present, but technically they're still the 5th member.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, like, they've
Yeah,
left, like, they've
essentially,
established residency somewhere else?
Well, yeah.
They're not eligible to be a BZA member.
Well, right. Yeah.
It's a little complicated. So, rules and procedures have been adopted in accordance with ordinance something something.
Yes.
I don't know what
That's
those
what it is.
ordinances are.
Well, yeah. It's- Technically, any rule changes you guys make, can be overruled by council, I believe. I gotta just find it, hang on.
Does that make sense?
Rules and, yeah. So, your rules and procedures are effective unless disapproved by council within 60 days after being filed with the clerk of council. And that is referring, that comes from, so that is code section 1139.02, which is your organization. And the ordinance that established that is ordinance 98-13. That's where that goes.
Can I just say, those ordinance numbers
Mm-hmm.
can't be located.
But it's in the, it's right there.
By me.
I'm just saying, it's at the very end, if you look at each
No, I
each
see them,
contract, yeah.
but like, what I mean is.
No, I know what you're
a
saying.
reference to the code section is a much easier way to find what you're looking for,
Yes.
and then a reference to the ordinance.
Yes,
That's all.
point taken, yes.
So perhaps we can update generally the references in here.
I can tell you offline about uncodified law too, if you want. That's fun.
Yeah.
Apparently you've been off.
All right, well, this was fun. You guys must be ready to call it a day.
Makes sense. No additional staff communication?
I have
Thanks,
one
Howard.
business
Is that
item.
enough?
So speaking of section
Oh,
15.
no.
I'm in contract to build a new house that won't be done probably for another 12 months, so I'll give notice.
That is not in Grandview?
That is not in Grandview, that's correct. If you take my talents to Jerome Township. So we can figure out, again, it's not probably till the end of the year, beginning of next year, so however you would like to handle that.
Do you know when your term is up?
I can verify that.
Yeah, I've totally lost track of.
Well, that was another thing, actually.
You're right, that wasn't.
You guys' term did not go in line with probably what the code says exactly.
Mr. Chairman, you're on the hook till 2028.
26.
Yeah, I know, I
2026.
know, I just,
But we have 2 people that are terming together that we shouldn't.
yeah, there's kind of a question of that, is that,
It's supposed to be every year, right?
yeah, it's supposed to be 1 a year
Hmm.
for 5-year term.
to go back and look at the, is somebody filling an unfinished chart?
Well,
Maybe it
again-
got notated incorrectly?
I think that's probably how it's possible wherever we are,
Yeah.
I don't know who.
That's a simple,
would be.
clerical, figure
Yeah.
that out, yeah.
Well,
But-
So however you'd like to handle
Answer-
that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really a question of
City council.
notifying
appoints-
council, yes, council appoints,
So it's, with all due respect, it's not up to the chair.
no, it's not, it's not.
But as long as I'm a resident of Grandview
But
Heights,
it's, right, but it's just a question of the right amount of notice to give to council so they can start looking for somebody else.
I suspect council would be happy to have you serve, as long as you're willing
Yes.
and able.
Yes.
But you might shoot Emily, a note, letting her know, so
Yeah.
that she can have that in her sights for next year.
We could find a person to say you're not starting until January, that's kind of what they did with me, I think,
Yeah.
it gave me a few months.
All right, well, Matt and I are gonna arm wrestle about who's gonna make all those updates.
It's whoever has the lower billable rate.
Not gonna comment on that, Mr. Chairman.
Oh.
Those rates are set by other people at Ricker and Egbert, not myself.